When we started, we said that the critical reading portion of the SAT was subdivided into two parts: the sentence completion, which was covered in a previous lesson, and the reading comprehension. Generally, questions based on reading passages will make up approximately 70% of the critical reading questions on the test. These questions may ask you to restate a piece of information from the passage presented, draw an inference, determine the definition, or recognize the purpose of a piece of writing. In the next few lessons, we will review the reading comprehension section. We will also identify the types of questions and the proven strategies to conquer each type. When you read passages on the SAT, you're reading for a specific purpose: to answer as many questions correctly as possible. Fortunately, the SAT has a habit of asking the same questions over and over again. So, no matter how long the paragraph is or what it tends to be about, you can expect to see the same 4 basic questions: big picture, little picture, inference, or vocabulary and context. Slightly more than half of these questions will be little picture or inference questions. Fewer than half, 30 to 40% approximately, will be big picture or vocabulary. Now that we know all the types of questions, let's look at each of them in depth. Big picture questions test how well you understand the passage as a whole. They ask about the main point or purpose of a passage or individual paragraphs, the author's overall attitude or tone, the logic underlying the author's argument, how ideas relate to each other in the passage. Big picture questions will usually come at the end of a question set. Oftentimes, students find little picture questions easier to answer, and they help them understand the whole passage and get a better understanding of the big picture. Now, let's look at the little picture questions. About a third of reading comprehension questions are little picture questions that will ask you about specific details or facts from the passage. Usually, there will be a line reference, which will give you a clue to where you can find this information in the passage. Beware of answer choices that seem reasonable, but do not make sense in the context of the rest of the passage. Little picture questions test whether you understand significant information that has been presented in the paragraph, your ability to locate information within the text, and your ability to differentiate between the main idea and specific details in the passage. Sometimes the answer to a little picture question can be found in the line that has been referenced. At other times, you will need to read a few sentences before or after that line to figure out what the correct answer is. At times, you still may not be able to find the answer to a little picture question in just one sentence. When in doubt, use the context or surrounding sentences to find the correct answer. Inference questions usually test your ability to use the information in a passage to form logical conclusions. The key to inference questions is to look for the evidence in the text. Usually there are very strong clues to what the correct answer is, so answer choices that seem far-fetched you should avoid. If you cannot find evidence in the text or the passage, then usually that is not the right answer. Make sure you read inference questions carefully. Some answers may be true, but if they do not correspond to the entire text or at least part of the passage, then they cannot be the correct answer choice. Vocabulary and context question asks about the usage of a single word. They test your ability to infer the meaning of the word in context. SAT words are fairly common words, but many will have several meanings, and that's the trick. Many of the answer choices will be different definitions of the tested word, but only one will work in context. Vocabulary and context questions almost always have a line reference, and you should always use it. Usually, the most common meaning of the word will jump right out at you, but rarely will it be correct. Don't be fooled by this. Using context to help you will help you from falling into this trap, but the obvious answer can be used to your advantage. If you get stuck while doing the vocabulary and context questions, eliminate the obvious choice and then guess from the remaining answers. Here's our strategy for a vocabulary and context question. First, find the tested word in the passage and treat it like a sentence completion question. Pretend that the word is a blank. Locate and read the sentences around the imaginary blank. Then, choose a word to go into the blank. Check the answer choices to see if you can find a word that matches your predictions. You can answer vocabulary and context questions and little picture questions without reading the entire passage. If there is a line reference, locate the material quickly and answer the question. You may not have the overall big picture, but hopefully you'll be able to find the correct answer just by focusing in on the little picture and the information in context to a word or a line. This is an example of a big picture question. The correct answer is A. Each paragraph of the passage discusses how African sculptors achieved their effects. This is an example of a little picture question. The correct answer is B. Both the first and second paragraphs mention the emotions aroused by African sculpture. This is an example of a vocabulary and context question. The correct answer, D. The passage discusses sculpture, so it can be inferred that the common plastic language means the common sculptural language. This is an example of an inference question. The correct answer is D. We are told that the African sculptor was highly trained and followed the rules without thinking about them. Similarly, a well-rehearsed pianist can perform a concerto without worrying too much about the notes. Both artists have become free to concentrate on mood or creativity. This is an example of a big picture question. The correct answer is E. Throughout the passage, the author discusses the rules of African art. He concludes that they were unconscious.